Hello, everybody. Welcome to Curry and Mitchell, from Watts to Brooklyn, and dare I say, all points in between and beyond. I'm Sheldon Curry here along with my longtime good friend James Mitchell, and we're going to discuss a number of topics in the sports world, politics, and anything else that fits our fancy, if you will. I know that's an old term, but I'm an old head. So thanks for joining us. So what's up, good brother?
Everything's good. Everything's good. Another beautiful day here in the Carolinas.
All right.
Things are cool.
Good. So, there's a lot of places we can go. Let's start off with the NFL. I mean, there are a number of things. There's the concussion issues, poor decision making by some of the coaches and late in the game, some surprises. So I'm going to throw that to you. What do you want to start off with?
So we're going to start off with the concussion situation and injuries in general in the NFL. I think there's a component that people rarely address, if ever, and that's the contribution that the artificial surfaces provide to these injuries. The part they play in a lot of these injuries, I think, could be avoided if they were playing on natural grass and dirt. And you very rarely hear anybody address that aspect of it. And it's something that bothers me terribly when you see what happened to Tua on both occasions, especially the second one when he was thrown, the guy twisted him and threw him down, and his head bounced off that concrete, which is all it is. And nobody addresses that. If that had been a dirt field, he could have possibly still gotten injured. I'm not going to say that wouldn't happen, but I doubt that it would be as severe as it was with him. And then another guy, Sterling Shepard, that Sunday before, he was simply running down the field. His cleat got caught in that rug or whatever they play on in the Giant Stadium, and his career is in jeopardy. He might be through, tore his knee up, and then that kind of thing happens all the time. And you hear players complain about it, but he doesn't get much play with the press or anybody else, and it really bothers me that nobody addresses that, and that the owners, they always talk about how much they care about their players. They won't. They try to avoid the expense of having to play on the dirt field. It takes more maintenance and upkeep than obviously playing on these rugs does, And I think that's something that needs to be addressed. I hope that the players will get together and do something about that through their union.
Yeah, very good points. And as you cited eloquently, the economic factor with the owners. Obviously, it's a lot cheaper for them to maintain these fields without grass and dirt. And the people that lose out are the players. Now, it's interesting that, it's one of the things I think for a long time, the people who have been very progressive in this and cited the things you're stating so eloquently. One of the things that people say that the reason it doesn't get done as it relates to the economics is also the unions, the number of years that people actually belong as active players to the union is an average of about 3 years. Right. And so it doesn't get a lot of traction. So it's really going to take some people in high places to look out for everybody. But I'm with you. I've often thought, and you see the same thing in baseball. Look at the number of injuries with some, I think of the bad knees that Andre Dawson, the Hall of Famer, former Expo and Cub, and he ruined his knees because he played his entire career largely, except for when he played in Wrigley Field. He played on that hard surface in Montreal. Gary Templeton started having knee injuries playing in St. Louis, and so it's a great point you raise, and and it shows the hypocrisy of the NFL. They're talking about safety.
Absolutely.
They talk about safety, and then instead of having all natural grass and dirt fields, too many of the stadiums had that AstroTurf. So I don't know. I'm not gonna hold my breath that this is going to help anytime soon, but I think you hit it. It's gonna have to come from the players.
Absolutely. They're gonna have to get together en masse and just determine that they won't play unless there's something done about that. It's just ridiculous that happens over and over again because they're expendable. Like you said, they average that career about 3 years, and there's always a new crop of guys coming out of college every year. And the owners couldn't care less, really.
Couldn't care less, and
the stadiums are packed and the TV money is pouring in, so who cares?
That's it. That's why I said this. If this thing ever gains any traction, it's going to have to come from some people in some high places, some of the top, players, quarterbacks that have some cachet, if you will.
Right.
And we'll see. All right, well let's stay in the NFL. Like I said, there are so many different places we can go, but
I know.
I want to start off with the one that just to me, and you hate to say laughable, you hate to be so critical, because part of sports is the unknown and the uncertain. But give me your opening observation of what Jim Harbaugh in Baltimore did when they were fourth and goal, 4 minutes to go in the game. Just had a 9 minute drive, had a chance to go up three on what people arguably believe is the best team in the NFL, and they went for it on fourth down. Unfortunately, they threw it in, or Lamar threw an interception, and then that brought the ball out to the 20. But notwithstanding that, prior to that even happening, I thought they should have kicked the field goal. Last thing I'll say before I let you jump in is it's always been an old rule of thumb. You get inside 5 minutes, you take points to go ahead. Period. Because you put pressure on the other team. So let you at it.
Oh, I agree completely with that. I was stunned. As a matter of fact, I watched that game, and I thought I had lost count of the downs. I really did. When he went to throw that pass, I thought, wow, did I miss a down? Is it third down? But I couldn't believe it was fourth down, and he did that. It just shocked me. And we saw what happened. It was unfortunate. And then I heard, I'll give credits too. I heard Keyshawn talk about it on this show that Monday. And he was saying that even if you're going to, he said, I can understand a coach maybe doing that. He said, but if you do it, you have to run a better play than they chose. Even if the play call was ridiculous. A drop back and a guy like that, there's no threat of the run from anybody else but other than him maybe. And it was just, so it was a combination of errors, I think. I think it was bad. I wouldn't have done it, number one. And then the play call, if you're going to do it, it was questionable. So I was totally against that move, and I don't know. That's an understanding.
No, I didn't. I think it was Murphy's Law and overdrive because, first of all, should have kicked the field goal because it changes the dynamic for Buffalo having to know they had to at least score a field goal to keep the game going.
Absolutely.
Second thing is, like you said, it was a poor play to go into an empty backfield like that. With you're talking about only 12 yards of field depth. They're on the 2 yard line. You got the 10 yards of the end zone. So it's a lot different. You don't have a lot of room to maneuver, so it helps the defense. And then, of course, the third part of it is that, of course, I know Lamar was thinking, well, it's fourth down. I got to give my guy a chance. But we should have been thinking if I can't get it to him, I got to throw it out of bounds so they can go on the two. So that's why I throw in Murphy's Law. And in all three accounts in this case, they dropped the ball. And, man, for Baltimore, they, and I guess you are who you are, but, man, they are just a couple of better plays and decisions from being 4-0. It's got to hurt. It's got to hurt.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And if they don't get their running game together, they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, this thing about, Lamar having to get every rushing yard and passing and, I heard the other day that the opposing teams are blitzing him about 35% of the time, which I think is the highest in the league. And he's still doing magic, but he needs some help, man.
Absolutely.
He needs some help, and the people that try to naysay, they need to go back into their caves, man. There's nothing you can say about this guy. I mean, he's just an incredible player. And give him some of the weapons, not to Johnny Shade on Duvernay and Bateman and those guys. I know they play pretty well, but give him a Jamar Chase, Keenan Allen, Justin Jefferson. Give him, give him one of those guys. Even a Cooper Kupp. Give him one of them. Right. Give him somebody.
Right. And those top receivers.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is ridiculous. So.
It is. And year after year, they do the same thing.
Year after year.
They never bring in top flight. Like you said, not to knock the guys they have. Because they're good athletes and they're good players. They're not the top of their craft. And they have an opportunity to bring those types of guys in. When they don't do it. They don't do it. They could draft and Olave out of Ohio State just as well as anybody else.
You got it.
They don't do it. They will not do it. So I don't know what's going on in their heads. Just put too much weight on, like you said, on Lamar. Has to do everything.
Yeah, and then one other point I'll make, and I've always thought Harbaugh was a pretty good coach. Obviously, he's won a Super Bowl, and they always are very competitive. And several seasons they're legitimate Super Bowl contenders. But, man, I when I thought about the decision he made in this game, and then those, what was it, like 3 times in a 4-week span he went for 2, instead of kicking the extra point to tie the game, and they lost every one of those games last year. And I just think at some point, man,
I know.
this I don't know if they blame it on analytics or whatever they blame it on, but
you give them the best rationale in the world, but it's not working. Try something else.
yeah, try something else, and it's just
Right.
like, but I don't know, man. So, any other observations from that NFL? We finished week 4 now after Frisco manhandled the Rams this past Monday night. And one of the interesting dynamics is that I believe 22 teams in the league are 2-2 and better. So I don't know if that's parity in overdrive or mediocrity in overdrive, but I guess if anything, 4 weeks in the season, most teams feel like they're still in it with rare exception.
Right. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And just getting back to the Lamar situation again, just the Ravens and that play calling sequence in general. They get down, on all these teams seem to do the same thing. They get inside the 10-yard line and they act like the running game is non-existent. They go to this shotgun, and so there's no threat of a run. And they just rely on the pass too much, I think. And I'd much rather, if I'm person, go inside the 10-yard line. I'm going to have a couple of backs behind the quarterback and line up under the center just to give them something to think about. And, do some rollouts or do something. This empty backfield stuff just kind of drives me crazy every time I see that happen. When they're inside the 10-yard line, nobody seems to want to try to run the ball in anymore. I don't understand that.
Yeah, and I still believe, particularly in the pass game, and particularly if teams make you get off the ball, you almost have to guess right. It has to be these instant things that has to happen on offense. A guy makes a quick cut and he's open or whatever, because you don't have a lot of room, you don't have a lot of time. And I'm with you, man. I guess I'm just too old school, but they can talk all they want about the new rules and how it's for passing, but there are times, man, where football has to be football, exactly. Man on man. I'm going to impose my physical will. I'm gonna get this yard or two. Exactly. And I know every now and then you see it, but I love the refrigerator Perry fullback type, whether he's blocking it. Man, give me that all day long.
Absolutely.
So I'm with you on that. Any surprises after 4 weeks, and surprises, relative to the beginning of the season so far?
I guess it's a surprise, but I'm just happy to see it, and that's the success that Geno Smith is having. But it doesn't really, I can't say it really surprises me a lot, because I've always thought he was a pretty talented player, just never got a real chance to play, and so I'm just happy to see him doing as well as he's doing, and I hope he can keep it up. He's really in the top, and statistically among quarterbacks right now, and I don't know if he's thrown any interceptions. Maybe 1 or 2, but he's playing very well. I'm just happy for him to see his career get a shot, turn it around, and he's about 31 years old. So he's been in the league, and it's kind of an anomaly in itself that a black quarterback who hasn't been a starter has been able to stay around the league as long as he has. I'm really surprised by that and happy for him that he's taking this opportunity and making the best of it. So I'm really pleased with that.
Yeah, you're already hearing some of the naysayers saying it's like a regression to the means average, that he's going to come back to the pack, as opposed to saying, hey, this is a veteran guy. He's really getting his first real chance on at minimum a decent team. I know Seattle doesn't have very good defense, and they're coming off their first losing season in a decade. But nobody. He has some really good weapons, man, with Lockett and Metcalf, and with Penny running the ball in the backfield. They got some weapons, and so who's to say he can't keep this up? So I'm with you on that, man. I'm with you.
A lot of that is wishful thinking.
Oh, I know what it is. You hit it on the nose.
Yeah, they always knock on any chance they get.
Yeah.
Whether it's has any validity or not, they're going to be naysayers out there. But I don't care about them. I expect that. I expect that. Yeah, but I'm saying go, Geno, go.
Yeah. What about the Eagles?
Oh man, well how I feel about the Eagles. That's my man, Jalen Hurts, the steal of the draft.
Yeah, you said it.
I'm a Jalen Hurts fan. I watched him his last year at Oklahoma, and he convinced me that he was a top flight quarterback. So I'm not surprised at all about him. I was mildly surprised that he dropped as low as he did in the draft. And but then again, given the context of who's making the draft, who's making the calls, and the way
Yeah, you're right about that. What's your thought about Dallas?
I think Dallas is interesting, man. The defense is obviously playing outstanding, and they're playing really well without Dak. So if they can keep it going like that, he comes back, and they keep rolling and avoid injuries, man. They'll be right in the mix. Yeah, Dallas is looking good, and that guy Rush is playing well. He's playing within himself. Not asking him to do too much, and so far he hasn't screwed it up. His first game was shaky, but they got through it. Defense pulled him through that, and he hasn't had thrown an interception yet, which is cool. Very good. So I think Dallas is going to surprise people. People always look for them to fade in the end, and they may do it again. But I don't know. They're looking good right now. I'm really hopeful for them. And they've got Gallup back, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I think that if Dallas, they have what they call this elite top 10, top 12 quarterback, and all those teams feel like they have to be pass happy. But when you look at Dallas, the way they're playing with Rush, obviously Dak is a better quarterback, he has a stronger arm, he's more mobile, he's more experienced. So you would think, maybe you run a lot of the same plays, and then when you get a chance to go deep on, 2nd and 1, 2nd and 2 play action, then you take advantage of that cannon that he has. And so, I'm with you, man. But, if they come back and, whereas Rush is throwing, 25, 26 passes a game, they're relying on their run game and their really good defense. When Dak comes back, if they come out the box trying to go 4 and 5 wide and throwing 40, 45 passes, then, it would be less about Dak and be more about the scheme. And I know you're a big Kellen Moore fan.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna say with your tongue firmly planted in your cheek.
I know, man. These so-called.
That's one of these offensive geniuses that don't know what the hell they're doing.
Man, I'm telling you, it just boggles your mind sometimes, man. You wonder what they're thinking. Yeah. But staying with Dallas, man, Micah Parsons obviously is kind of the rage of the league on defense.
Right.
And I'm not one to get into these super comparisons for a guy who's been in the second year. I understand why people do it, but remembering what I remember of Lawrence Taylor, what you think about though? I mean, I know it's a compliment to Parsons to be even mentioned in that conversation, but what's your take on that?
Well, I don't think, like you said, I don't think it's fair to compare the two of them. He is dominant right now, what he's doing, but there's only one Lawrence Taylor from what I've seen. I haven't seen anybody as disruptive as he was when he played. This guy might be close, and maybe when the dust settles in 10 years from now, he's played that long, and we'll be able to look at him and say, hey, yeah, he was pretty good. He comes close to Lawrence. Lawrence, to me, is in the class by himself. I don't see that comparison at all.
I agree. And we all have our opinions, and you have to be careful because sometimes I'm critical of other folk, but I know in my lifetime, and then when I think about a lot of the players I read, and I always have to factor in the integrated era.
Right.
Lawrence Taylor, if not the best defensive player in the history of the game, is in the top 3 or 4. He just,
one of the most disruptive forces I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's like nobody could do anything with him. He lined up anywhere, he did anything. It was just amazing. He had speed, power.
Yeah.
He had it all. Smart.
Yeah.
He was just complete defensive linebacker guy you want to have as a linebacker.
Yeah, he was something else, man. And he was one of those guys you just enjoyed watching play, man. People come out to watch quarterbacks and wide receivers and backs, but, man, when 56 lined up for the Giants, man, it's like you come to watch him and what he was going to do.
That is so true.
But in fairness fairness not the right word. To speak to Parsons, I think he should feel it's a big compliment that people are bringing Lawrence Taylor up because I don't know how many people of this present day generation knows how good Lawrence Taylor really was.
I know. That's
And
true.
So he, to me, him, Reggie White, guys like that, man, are some of the greatest that ever played on that side of the ball. So
Right.
yeah.
There's some special guys.
Special guys.
Like that. Just stood out. Yeah.
So what did you think about Patrick Mahomes and KC in Tampa Bay on Sunday night?
Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. He's in the class by himself. I love watching him play. Usually he's on when he's on, and he's really off. Unfortunately, he was off at the Super Bowl, second half of the Super Bowl last year. But
yeah, the AFC Championship. AFC Championship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They didn't make the Super Bowl for the championship.
Yeah.
They should have lost that game, but that's water under the bridge at this point.
Yeah.
He's just magical. I love to watch them. I love to watch the schemes that Bieniemy and Reed come up with, and they put them in position to be successful, man. And talk about creativity inside the 10-yard line, man. Kansas City has they have the lead on that right now. The plays they come up with, and they utilize all kinds of stuff. And I just enjoy watching them play. I look forward to seeing them every week. And Patrick is magical.
Yeah, he is, man. He is.
He just plays, sits up there and plays. And very creative. Yeah. Very creative. Yeah.
What do you think about the slow start of the Rams? Super Bowl hangover, offensive line injuries.
Yeah, they had a lot of things happen with them. And reality of it is, for me, is Matthew Stafford is not that good a quarterback. I mean, he has a lot of stats and all that kind of stuff, but he's the kind of guy that always, throughout his career, gives the other team a chance to beat you. He throws the ball away too much, too many interceptions, and he's just too consistent in crucial moments. But so I'm not shocked. I think they can still get it together, to be in the playoff mix. But I don't see them being a dominant team this year. I didn't pick them to be a dominant team this year. And they're missing OBJ, and he was crucial. And the fact that they forced the ball to Cup, too much is absurd, man. They're just ignoring the rest of the team. I don't understand what they're doing on offense. I really don't.
Yeah, and that's a recipe for disaster. I mean, it's one thing to give you a premier receiver an appropriate number of targets, and maybe, I don't know what the number is, typically maybe 10 to 12, 13, depending on the game and who you're playing. But to get 19 targets, and what ends up happening is that you get very predictable. And he's an excellent receiver. But, in this last game against the Niners, he caught 14 passes for less than 125 yards, which means 9 yards per catch. Which, it's just, you're so predictable. So what Frisco was doing is like, okay, you keep dinking and dunking, and eventually we're going to sack the quarterback or get a pick or do both. And that's what they did. That's exactly what they did. And that's when you get very predictable like that. So to your point, they've got to start spreading the ball. I guess, like you said, they miss OBJ. At some point, they're going to get Van Jefferson back. I don't know what's going on. They're not throwing the ball to Allen Robinson that they picked up from the Bears. So it's real interesting, and the one thing that they have going for them, but I guess all four teams is all the teams in the NFC West are 2-2. So, but I agree with you. I think another big loss is Von Miller. Because like him and OBJ helped separate them from a lot of the teams that were pretty good last year. And now they don't have either one of them, and I think it's showing. And then their offensive line is beat up too. My understanding is they've had 4 or 5 guys out at some point in the first 4 weeks. So, and again, I'm not so much that I'm a Ram fan, just that they're the defending Super Bowl champions, and so that's why I brought that up. So.
On paper they look good, but they just haven't, like you said, with all the injuries and the missing players from last year. They haven't got off to a great start, but they have time to get it together to get healthy. So we'll see what happens. But I've never been that impressed with Matthew Stafford, though. So, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, so he has that on his resume. You can't take it away from him.
Yeah, and I'm with you. You try to be fair, but I think you called it before. He's not a great quarterback. He's a decent quarterback. And like most decent quarterbacks, I'll say decent to good. It's dependent on what you have around you. That's why I'm not so big on these quarterbacks getting all this publicity and all the kudos when they do well. Because with rare exception, it's a dependent position, and it's just too many. And so if a guy is losing his couple of top receivers, we understand why he doesn't play as well. But then all of a sudden, the discussion goes from how great the quarterback is to, oh, he don't have his weapons. And that's the problem I have with it. It's not so much, just tell the truth. You know, when they got great weapons, say, hey, he's a pretty good quarterback, but he has these weapons, you know. And so, and that's what a lot of these folk won't do because they want to control the narrative to make people believe a certain thing. But at the same time, they won't talk about the lack of weapons of a Lamar Jackson. You know, and can you imagine? Think of if he had the receivers that Joe Burrow has.
Oh, I know.
Or when Keenan Allen's healthy, the receivers that Justin Herbert has.
Right.
I mean,
I know.
You know.
He off the chart. He off the chart what they be doing.
So it's just the inconsistency in the coverage and the narratives just kind of really, you know, pisses you off. So
Absolutely.
yeah. I'm going to switch reels just a little bit. We can jump back. And like I said, there's no order. That's going to be the great thing with Curry and Mitchell from Brooklyn to from Watts to Brooklyn. We can go in any direction. But for lack of a better term, I'll call it media malpractice or media malfeasance. It's just a handful of things that I just don't think the media covers with any appropriateness. And so I won't spend a lot of time, but like one of them, Brett Favre. The scandal that's going on in Mississippi with the diversion of funds. I understand in some circles, people say, well, he gave some of the money back and all that. But just the way the media has almost ignored this story, man. And again, you know, I have to go back. If that, you know, that had been Randall Cunningham or somebody like that, I mean, we'd be hearing that, you know, some of these shows, they spend 20 minutes a day on nothing. And I ain't hardly heard a peep, you know. And you'll see it for 2 minutes, and as much as I say that, I'm actually not big on beating down on anybody, but fair is fair, you know. And then the bigger issue with that, you look at the diversion of all this money going to places that it shouldn't go, to people of means, to people that don't look like me or you. And then at the same time, Jackson, Mississippi's water is contaminated, and they can't get the governor or anybody in the state to fix that, to a point where the NAACP now has to file a lawsuit. So people can get clean water, but yet they can divert millions of dollars. I mean, it's just, and so when you juxtapose the two things, or maybe it's not two things, but the situations, it's god awful, and it speaks to a lot of what's going on in this country. I don't know if you got any comments on that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, the problems that Jackson, Mississippi, and Flint, Michigan, and places like that are facing are not accidental. You know, they're purposefully done because of the makeup of the population of those places. You know, they're mostly black, poor, and especially in Jackson. So the state does everything it can that cripples that city. And, you know, from, you know, some people moving out to the suburbs and, you know, with the good jobs and the good schools and all that kind of stuff, and strangling Jackson financially so that they can't exist and make it hard for them to exist at any rate. That's as purposeful as anything else in this country. This is a racist country. It hasn't changed since its founding, and it's not about to change, apparently. You know, we're still fighting the same old battles over and over and over again. So it's not shocking to me that happens. It's not shocking to me that you don't hear much about, you know, Brett Favre and his involvement in this, you know, thievery that goes on all the time. And it's not just him as politicians, it's business people, it's everybody throughout this corrupt society. But, you know, we hear about Michael Vick's dogs, you know, like it's the worst thing in the world. He had some dogs fight, went to jail for it, and ruined his career. But you don't hear anything about, you know, something as egregious as this. So it's not surprising, given who controls the narrative and what they put out there is consistent. You know, it's America as usual.
And to your point about it being intentional, the diversion of federal funds for infrastructure and clean water that the folks in the state government of Mississippi will not send to Mississippi. I mean, to Jackson is just. I mean, it's criminal, and you know, and this is where so many people have lost faith in this society. Is that how can you not have clean water, and money is given to make sure that you have clean water?
Absolutely.
And it's just, It just that's why I termed the lack of coverage on Favre and like you said, and the other politicians is media malpractice. He's a good old boy in a whole bunch of ways. Oh, the gunslinger, the affable, and so people, because I've heard a couple people say why they don't talk about Favre that much, but there's no excuse for that. It should be front and center. And, and if we're going to be fair about it. Another one, and some of these are not that egregious, but it just bothers me. I think Miami Dolphins have gotten off to a really good start. They're 3-1. Unfortunately, what's happened to Tua, he's going to be out for a little while. Teddy Bridgewater should step in and do a pretty good job for them. But, what amazed me, particularly after the first 3 weeks, was so many people in the media talked about the improved Miami defense. And I don't know statistically how much they had improved, but I do know the last two, and I really have to say the last 2.5 years before this year, the last 9 or 10 games of Brian Flores' first year where he had to kind of clean house, and they started off something like 0-7 or something and finished 5-4, including a win over the Patriots, which I think actually hurt Tom Brady and New England, and they lost a bye opportunity. And then he goes 10-6 and just misses the playoff in 2020, and then he goes 9-8 and just misses the playoff last year. And of course, he gets fired. Right. But all those teams had what? Very good defenses. Exactly. And so when I say media malpractice, somebody's got to say, nothing against Mike McDaniel. This is not about the present coach. Is that somebody's got to say he inherited a team that was a good defensive team. And also have to speak to the fact that, Miami has been a winning team. They had the first back-to-back winning records in almost 2 decades under Flores. That's right. So when people talk about all this, blop to blop, and they've improved, and they're this, and obviously with Tyreek Hill, their offense has improved. I'll admit that, which probably makes them a better team with that defense. Right. But it just bothers me. Because, see, again, people might think I'm picking, but this is what happens. If Brian Flores had been anybody else, people wouldn't hesitate to talk about his defense that this guy inherited. But with Brian Flores, it's like it's silent. It's crickets, as they like to say.
Right. That's so consistent. So consistent. And in terms of malfeasance among the media and the networks, it drives me crazy. That's why I watch most games with the sound on.
I do sometimes too. I hate to admit it.
With the lack of recognition of black offensive coordinators, drives me up the wall. You will see time and time again. We talk about the guy in Dallas, telling more what a genius he is. The camera's always on him when the play is successful or something like that. How many times do you see that with Brian Leftwich with the Buccaneers? Almost never. Only talk about what the quarterback did. It's always Brady. Brady did this, or Brady pulled that play out of the hat. Brady pulled this play out of the hat. Never Brian Leftwich. You rarely see him even on camera. Once in a while, he doesn't get half the publicity or the credit he gets. And the Eric Bieniemy stuff is just beyond reproach. I mean, as successful as Kansas City's been, and all we talk about is Andy Reid. And I'm not saying Andy Reid does not have a lot to do with what happens, but on a play-by-play basis, guy calling those plays is Eric Bieniemy, who you never see on camera almost, and never gets any credit. It's always Andy Reid did this, Andy Reid did that. And unless Andy Reid is a ventriloquist, most of the time he's not calling the plays. They have cameras on his mouth that's moving. Last week he seemed to be talking a lot. But usually, he must be able to throw his voice. He's probably sitting there by the mouth shut. And the plays are being called, so somebody's calling. And it's not Andy. So, but you never see Eric Bieniemy. We only get it to this guy not being able to get a job. And that happens ad nauseum with all these guys, the defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators who are black. They don't get the same opportunities. And again, this is America at its best. It does what it does. So it's not surprising. These teams are controlled by rich, old white men for the most part. And they don't want to hire black men to run their organizations. It's as simple as that. And people won't put it out there like that, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's no more, no less than that. It's sad, but America hasn't changed that much.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the drip, drip, drip and the wasting away. I bring that up is because one of the things about unfairness when race is not involved, and then discrimination and bias when race is involved, is so often short of somebody doing something seriously violent or just something that's just what I would call universally unacceptable, and that's getting to be less and less now given the current climate. But so many of the little chip drip drips get ignored, and I've always felt that that's one of the problems is that, so like anybody hearing this discussion between me and you, they'll say, oh, Brian Flores, and then they'll say, oh, Brett Favre, and oh, Eric Bieniemy. But then you start looking and say, well, wait a minute, it's the frequency and the preponderance of this. Why does this happen everywhere?
Right.
And so Brian Daboll of the Giants, ex-coordinator for Buffalo.
If he's a genius, yes, he gets to be the head coach of the Giants because of his offensive brilliance, in Buffalo, then why has Bieniemy got the same play?
Right.
You can't compare the two in terms of success between Buffalo and
That's right. That's true.
So, how do you explain that? Like you said, it's just over and over and over again. But the position is supposed to be, well, you're supposed to be happy that he's down being allowed to be an offensive coordinator. We got a few black quarterbacks playing, but he shouldn't have been playing all the damn time, but that's beside the point. You should be happy with the progress we've made, that kind of attitude. I mean, please,
Yeah, and then I have always had a problem with this idea, like when the discussion is, and you'll hear, and they mean well, but you'll hear some of the analysts who applaud progress, and they say, oh, he's proven that black people can play quarterback. My thing is, please, gotta always play quarterback. Don't insult me about like, oh, all of a sudden in the year 2017 that black folks could they proved they can play quarterback.
Exactly.
And man, I get so tired. And the same thing about, prove they can coach. It's like, prove nothing. And all you got to do is go back through history. The narratives when they kept us out to justify keeping us out was all these tropes about, pick one, character trait, intelligence, whatever. And then as soon as black folks had a little bit of opportunity, they dominated these sports. So they would have dominated quarterback if you let them play 50 years ago. Give me a break. Give me a break. So I get really offended when I hear people lauding, they proved, like.
Well, that's the whole European supremacy mindset, that somehow they are above everybody else on this planet, and everybody else has to prove something to them. It's absurd. It's completely absurd. If anything, they need to do a lot of proving that they belong in the human race, if anything, from my opinion, with everybody else, because the atrocities that they've committed throughout the history of this planet are, beyond obscene. Not that they cornered the market on it, but maybe they did corner the market on it. I'm being too kind here. It's absurd, man. I'm so tired of that kind of foolishness.
Yeah.
All the time. My mind, we're all humans on this planet, and everybody given equal opportunity. Some people will rise to do great things, and others will be mediocre, and some will be just run of the mill, just in the middle somewhere.
There you go.
And that's the reality of it. Yeah. And nobody wants to see it that way. Not enough people want to see it that way.
Yeah.
We all breathe the same air, and bleed the same blood, and need the same nourishment to stay alive on this planet. So if we ever get to a point of realizing that and get away from this foolishness of race and borders and nationalities and stuff like that, I'm speaking like a utopian now. But,
yeah, well, it's always good to speak in an optimistic way, but the reality is that a lot of folk got a long way to go, man.
Oh, a long way to go.
Got a long way to go.
But to your point, just so suddenly someone has proven their ability to walk among these so-called geniuses, exceptional people, is absurd. Because everybody has that ability, given the opportunity. That's all it is. That's all it is.
Well, and it's been in so many arenas, not just sports, but one of the reasons that sports really shows the hypocrisy is that, they keep scoring, they keep stats.
Right.
And so, you go back to the 40s, and you read some of the things that some of the writers are writing about black players, and before Jackie and Dobie and those folk and Nuke and Campy. And you go back and you read some of those accounts, man, and then within a few short years, you got Aaron and Mays and Banks and Frank Robinson, and it's like, so wait a minute, the same guys that you say couldn't play, why are they dominating? There's only a handful of them playing. Same thing in the NBA with the Baylors and the Robertsons and the Russells and the Chamberlains, Jim Brown and football, and so.
The only thing that changed is access.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's all it is. That's all it is. Give an opportunity. Anybody's capable of anything. So please.
It just, and now we've seen Tiger and the Williams sisters and Simone Biles, and I mean you go on and Lewis Hamilton and Grand Prix. It's sickening. That's my point. It's sickening. It is sickening.
It's so ridiculous. It's so absurd, don't you? That you wonder how anybody could ever ascribe to it. Except that many certain people, and they're hanging on to it, because it works for them. It's just a shame. You think that everything that this world has missed because of the type of racist foolishness is just beyond imagination. The geniuses who've been stifled or murdered, not given an opportunity to expand their knowledge and spread their wisdom throughout the planet. It's just sad, really. It really is very sad. And it goes on and on and on because it's continually taught, and it just, it lingers on and on because it benefits a certain group of people. And they keep it going.
Yeah. And just one more on that. I mean, you think of the number of inventors and neurosurgeons and some of the people. I mean, it's just amazing, and that nobody, unless you are well-read, the common person would think that, there's only one group of people in the world ever did anything.
Exactly.
And I just, so anyway, that whole thing about playing quarterback, they finally proved they could play quarterback. How insulting. Oh, yeah, you read those accounts. Couldn't be an offensive guard. Remember, it couldn't be a center. Couldn't keep up with all that. Couldn't change the plays on the line. What the blah, blah, blah. Couldn't be an inside or middle linebacker, both the blue. And then you had the Willie Laniers and stuff. I'm just so, oh, God, man. Don't even get me started. Don't get me started. I'm going to go with one more in the media malpractice. This will probably be a common theme when something comes up. Here's another one. Now, before I make this comment, I'm going to throw this out at you.
Okay.
Are the Detroit Lions a better team than, at least what people are saying? People say, they're very competitive. They're playing hard for Dan Campbell. He's changed the culture. Is that fair to say that's what we've been hearing?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to combat that part of it. They're 1-3. Last year, they won, 2 or 3 games. Okay. Go back 4 or 5 years, Jim Caldwell had them in the playoffs once, had 2 or 3 wins, and they fired him with a winning record.
Right.
Media malpractice. Now, I know between him was the guy in New England. What was his name? He was a defensive. This year, I guess he's co-offensive coordinator. I forgot his name. He went to Detroit and couldn't win nothing. He was a former defensive coordinator in New England. What's his name?
I can't think of his name. I know
he's there with Joe Judge now. I can't think of his name. I apologize to the audience. But he was the guy that replaced Jim Caldwell. So you think about his record and now Dan Campbell's record, even though Dan Campbell has changed the culture.
Right, the culture. Right.
He changed the culture. And he's won, 3 or 4 games in 2 years, and he changed the culture. But Jim Caldwell had a winning record after 3 or 4 years, so did he change the culture?
Well, he gets fired.
And he gets fired. Media malpractice.
And they had a winning record since, right?
Or maybe I should say analysts on all these shows malpractice.
Right, there you go.
And they're going to jump on there. He's changed the culture. Dan Campbell's changed the culture. And again, as I say that, this is not about Dan Campbell. It's about the coverage of these guys. Like you were talking about Bieniemy, related, relative to other offensive coordinators. So, all right. Well, I'm going to get off my media malpractice, but I thought I had to say something about Favre, Flores, and that.
That is so true.
Yeah. I'm gonna take you out of the sports world, even though actually he is a sports figure. You got any thoughts on Herschel Walker?
None that I can share on the airways. My true feelings about Herschel Walker.
Woo, man.
What can I say? You know, once again, the Republican Party has found some buffoon to put before the world and pop up as a viable candidate to be a representative of anybody in any form of government anywhere. Herschel Walker's absurd.
And vying to be one of 100 senators in a country of over 330 million people. Think of what's wrong with our system. Well, we have a guy, and there's others like him, so I don't want to make him be a one-off. But it's incredible, man.
And the fact that he has an opportunity to win, it's frightening. It's frightening. It really is. What can I say?
Yeah.
It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of ridiculous stuff in my time on this planet, man. Believe me. But Herschel Walker, man, goodness gracious. What can I say?
Who would have thought in 1980 when he was a freshman and they won Georgia's first national championship, and 2 years later he was Heisman Trophy winner. He had a really good USFL and NFL career. And my, oh my.
Right. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
It's sad.
It is. No, and it's an indictment of our country. I mean, people can say what they want to say. You've got to have people who have intelligence, no matter what side of the political spectrum you might be on, you got to have people with some integrity, some intelligence, people who care about, because that's what they're supposed to be there. And of course, I know that that's not what's going on anymore. But that's the ideal, it should be. And it's an insult that somebody like that, to your point, has a chance to win. That's just ridiculous.
It is. It's absurd.
It's an insult that people like that have these opportunities.
It is. And it shows you how insulting the so-called Republican Party is to people of color in general, and the people of Georgia, completely. They just, to put up a candidate like that. I heard this limeball Newt Gingrich guy the other day talking about Herschel, what a plus he would be to the Senate because of his Christianity, morality that he'll bring to the Senate, and saying, well, he's overcome a lot. He's had a lot of concussions. I mean, he actually said that.
Well, so a guy that got all these picadillos, as they say,
right,
and all these issues. Right. Now, the guy that's actually, you want to get into Christian, Warnock is a pastor.
right.
From one of the most famous churches in not only the country, in the world.
I know. Stephen Colbert, who I love, he pointed that out on this show the other day. He talked about Christianity, being some big Christianity to the Senate. He compares Herschel Walker to this guy, the Warnock. The absurdity of it, it's just so crass and it's obscene.
It is obscene.
It's obscene. It's these racist, fascist party who will do anything they can to get control.
Keep power.
Yeah, that's it. It shows how desperate they are and how crazy they are.
Yeah.
And this country is really at a tipping point. And not the first time that it's been at a tipping point, but it's at another one of those precarious positions again, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few months or the next couple of years. Yeah, well,
it's going to be very interesting what white society, the what I will call the fair-minded folk, because I think black folks, and I think you can add other definitely Native Americans, Latinos that have been in this country for a while, and even now Asian Americans. But I think black folks are uniquely. We've seen, when you looked at the attack on the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and so many people talked about that this is not who we are. But that's who it's been for black people. We've had countless number of circumstances from medium-sized communities, small cities that have been devastated when people got upset about, and largely it was about some type of success, no matter how much the society had their boot on our neck. We found ways to have communities that were vibrant, a lot of times self-sufficient, even in that just hellacious segregation and racism. And then at some point, people say, well, we'll just go take it. We'll burn it down.
Right. And that's it. They've done hundreds of times.
And that's what they've done. And so for us, we see that and we say, no, this is what we've seen. We've seen that.
Right.
We've seen that. So
That's exactly who they are.
So your point about a tipping point, you're right about that. It's going to be interesting to see. That's why I say what the fair-minded among them are going to finally do. Because this thing, man, but one of the things, I shouldn't be so facetious, but this whole notion about when people are running for office, they can't indict them, and you know who I'm talking about. So I'm going to tell all my friends that whether it's a speeding ticket or whatever, as soon as they come, you tell them you're running for dog catcher, or you're running for you can't arrest me or give me a citation because I'm running for dog catcher. I mean, think how absurd that would be. But you can commit all these crimes, and I just oh man. All right, well, I don't know if you want to do one more non-football. You got any comments on Virginia Thomas and her husband, Clarence Thomas, and all this stuff about her alleged role in the 2021, January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol? She's clearly an election denier. And then she's gone on record saying that she's never had a conversation as such with her husband. And he sits on the Supreme Court. And not only they have matters that, obvious things, but this could end up coming to them in some form or fashion because people expect some type of lawsuit related to the what they call the January 6th committee. So you got any comments?
Because what's the reason for not having that discussion with the husband? Because he's a sitting member of the Supreme Court. I mean, it's absurd notion to say that, and anybody wants to believe that, what can I say to them? It's absurd. And there's just a certain class of people, I think, and the former president is a leading candidate in this, who, if they were any other citizen, would have been indicted, probably in jail, for all the crimes that he's committed. So this country is just, I don't know, it's teetering on the precipice of all our fascism, in my opinion. And it's going to be just to see which way it goes. Yeah. Like you said, if people of good mind don't stand up and reject this stuff, we could be like Germany in the 1920s, 1930s. We do the same thing all over again. It can happen here, it can happen anywhere. It's already happened in other countries.
Yeah.
What's happening in Italy and other countries in Europe, these fascists have taken over, and it can happen here. It's, like you said, black folks have been terrorized by this type of mentality since our existence has been dragged here. It's not new to us. This fascism has been here for us.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's been here forever for us. Yeah.
It's nothing new to us. It's nothing new to other poor people either, even though they try to distance themselves from the same struggles, based on their skin color a lot of times, which is foolish. But that's what they've been indoctrinated to do, and a lot of them go for that. But poor people in general have been victims of that type of behavior over and over and over again, whether it's trying to form unions or trying to get decent pay, whatever it's been. And, but that kind of history is not taught, number one. You find that out on your own when you after you get out of the so-called education system of this country. They don't teach about, the strike that people went through of all colors. It's trying to exist, against the monolith of rich people in this society. Wanted to beat them down so they could keep their, lifestyle at the benefit of everybody else. Or the disadvantage of everybody else, I should say. I don't know what to say.
Oh no, you said it very well, man. You said it very well. I mean, this is something we could talk about ad nauseum because of, like you said, you go back to Nazi Germany in the 30s, and it's so interesting because if you go back just a few years ago and they talked about somebody getting elected president that didn't have a plurality of votes, and we saw that in 2000 also, and when you start thinking about fascism and the way it grows, when Hitler was first elected, he barely had, I think, what, 34% of the popular vote. You know, but you know he went from there and he did what he did, and you know the rest is infamous and tragic. So, but I'm with you. I've you know I'm not a pessimist by nature, but I'm a realist. And the things that I see right now, you know, like I said, if good people don't stand up, and stand up, I mean stand up, stand up. I'm not talking about the you know, walk in a you know, one day and then go back in your house. It's going to be protracted. It's going to be problematic for a lot of people, but that's the only way you're going to be able to push this back, because these folks they're decadent to me. I mean, because I don't know how you wake up in the morning and wish ill on people, how you lock kids in cages, how you I just don't. Those things are so foreign to how I think. When I see other people doing it, or hate somebody because of the color of their skin, or I think this. You said it well. It's a tipping point, and I think these next 5 to 10 years are going to tell us what kind of society this country's going to be. We go from there.
I agree.
All right, man. I'm gonna switch reels here. Aaron Judge, 62. What you?
Go for it. I'm happy for him. Like him. Always have. I've been a big supporter of him when he was a rookie, and they would debate whether they were going to bring him up. Even I was praying that they did. He came up along with Sanchez and Torres.
Mm-hmm.
I was really happy for him. So I'm really happy to see the way his career is going so far. He's an exceptional ball player. He can do everything. You know, he's a complete ball player. He's good defensively. He runs the base as well. He kicks for average. And he's a good ball player. I like him, and I'm happy for him. I wish him well.
Yeah.
I wish him well. It's a pleasure to watch him play. I look forward to seeing him play.
Yeah, it's somewhat of an irony when we went through the high octane 1990s and 2000s that you know are talked about as the PED era, and you had the number of home runs hit and the guys that hit over 60, and they were all in the National League, which was interesting. And it was interesting to me, given that the American League has a DH, means that the players in the American League, because of the rotation of the lineups go through because of the DH hitting instead of the pitch. I know now that National has a DH, but until a year or two ago they didn't. So I'd always thought somebody in the American League would have you know, during that period, but nobody did. So the irony, I'll get back to the irony, is Judge 62, Maris 61, Roof 60, and Roof 59. The 4 top home run totals in American League history are all Yankees. And that's right, and all right fielders. So I just thought that was ironic. But he is an excellent player, man, and yeah. So Shohei Ohtani had a fantastic season. I think he finished the season, 34 homers, 90-something plus ribs, hit over 270, won 15 games, struck out over 200 batters. And I think he's the first since they started keeping ERA in the early 19 teens. I think it was 1913. He's the first player, I believe, in history that had enough plate appearances to qualify for, you know, the rate statistics like batting average, slugging, and the first pitcher. I mean, and also for ERA title, an inning per game. And so not only to qualify, but then to do it at the levels that he's done it. He is just a fantastic player.
He's incredible.
He is a fantastic player.
He really is.
Yeah, he is fantastic.
You got that page to go see.
Yeah, he is fantastic. But I also think that, you know, I know there was a lot of he should be MVP, but Judge is going to win that MVP. He should win it. He had a great year, and whether it's fair or unfair, the Angels finished so far out of first place and was so far under 500, you just can't give him the MVP. You have to give it to Judge, and I don't even think it's going to be close. But Shohei, man, I mean, I don't know. Just think about it. If you're 15-9 with a 2.3 ERA and over 200 strikeouts, that's really good. If you hit 273 with 34, 35 homers, steal about 15, 20 bases, that's really good. And to do it, man.
So he's the most exceptional player in baseball.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, I think you have to be fair that, you know, I mean, you have to say he's the best. when we say all around now, he's all. I mean, you can't be no more all around than that.
I know. That's
And the only thing I'll say, and people can, is that we got to go back. The Negro Leagues had people like Diego that did similar things like this when he played. And
when it goes back to the same old situation, opportunity and publicity. Those guys, he's not the first person that was capable of doing that.
Right.
He's just the first person to give the opportunity.
Give the opportunity.
Level. That's all that is.
And he had leverage coming from Japan. He was very sought out, and he said, "Look, I'm doing both," and they knew they had to do that to get him over here. So, but I remember some of the naysayers when he came over, like, "Oh yeah, he won't. He'll find out soon."
Well, they always said that.
Sure did.
That's right.
Yeah.
I never forget when Tiger started, and when his early interviews, and the guy said, "Well, what do you expect to do?" He said, "I expect to win." And I think Sheldon was one of them. Some other guy, they would laugh and say, "Oh well."
Montgomery.
The game will humble him, and he'll learn better than that. And Tiger's attitude was, "Well, if you come here not expecting to win, why are you coming here?"
That's right.
Which is true. I expect to win every time I play.
That's right, man.
So these other guys, they were just, I don't know what they were thinking, but they were thinking they were going to win every week.
Well, they had that comfort mentality outside of maybe a Nicholas or somebody that was at the preeminent players. Golf is one of those sports, man. You win a tournament a year, you win one major in your career, and you were good. You make your money, and that's until Tiger came along, And so he definitely raised that bar, man. I'm with you on that. Well, I think most people believe that, and it's too bad the injuries and some of his circumstances kind of took that away from but he's a great player. So the MLB playoffs will be starting. They got a new format now where the top two seeds in each league have buys into the division round. And so 6 play 3, 4 play 5 in the so-called wild card round, with the third seed is actually a division winner, the best record of the 4 teams that are left, and the 3 wild card and the third best division winner, I should say. So the any observations? I think I don't have it in front of me, but I believe in American League, I think it's Tampa Bay playing Cleveland. And I think Seattle plays Toronto in the American League. And then in the National League, I think Philly plays the Mets. And I think San Diego.
The Padres play the Mets.
Oh, the Padres play the Mets. Oh, okay. And the Phillies play. Who are the Phillies playing?
That's a good question.
I think the Phillies are playing the Mets and the Padres are playing the Cardinals, I think.
No, it's the other way around. But the Mets are definitely playing San Diego.
Well, what's your observations, that notwithstanding?
Right. Well, like I said, I don't know. I had a lot of hope for the Mets. Not that I'm a Met fan, but the way they've been playing, I thought they were going to do really well. But then the second half was, up and down a bit, and we put them in the position they got into.
But they did win over 100 games, though.
They had a good year, but the Braves just a little bit better. A couple of games, and I don't know. They seem to have lost some of their whatever it was they had to propel, to the first half of the year when they were just stomping everybody. I don't know. I'm really kind of up in the air about who's going to do what. I would think that they would beat the Padres, but but I don't know. They both teams have pretty good pitching, and Machado's had a great year. Soto has been as good as everybody thought he was going to be in the second half. He hasn't contributed that much, but he could get out at any moment, I guess. But I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up between those two. And the Cardinals and the Phillies, I would lean more toward the Cardinals. I think they have a little more offense. And San Diego plays the Mets tomorrow at 8:00.
Well, with that being said, I'm not going to, I don't want to, it's early on. We got plenty of time in the next episode or two. But my preliminary thought in the American League, since in the National League, since we've been talking about them, is is, do you think the Mets and their pitching can because they obviously won 101 games, can they overcome Atlanta or the Dodgers with DeGrom and Scherzer and Bassett? You know, they got Diaz in the pen. They got a really strong staff.
They do. But I don't think their offense has been consistent enough lately, anyway. But although, Lindor and I can't think of the first
Alonso.
Yeah, couldn't think of his name. Saved my life for a moment.
Pete Alonso, yeah.
Pete Alonso, the big fella. Yeah, they've been coming on the last few games. Alonso seemed to have found his stroke again. I don't know. I just think that the Braves has got a little bit too much offense for them. I really do, and I could be wrong because, like you said, the Mets have that great pitching and Scherzer and those guys, but I'd be toward the Braves in that series.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Braves took some of that invincibility away from them because they had that 3-game series a week or so ago.
Yeah.
And the Mets they were up a game. They were up in the tiebreaker in terms of head to head, and Atlanta beat DeGrom and Scherzer on back-to-back nights, and then they won the third game, and all of a sudden they were sitting pretty. So that doesn't mean necessarily they would do the same thing in the playoffs if they met, but I think there was a sense of invincibility with those two, and Atlanta proved to themselves, hey, we can beat them. So it's going to be interesting. I think the team to beat, though, is going to be the Dodgers. I know Atlanta beat them last year, but the Dodgers are loaded, man.
They're tough.
Goodness gracious. They are loaded, and so it's going to be interesting. And then I think in the American League, I think it's going to come down to Houston and Cleveland. As much as I don't want to dog the Yankees, but I think Cleveland has. I don't know what the numbers are over the season, but I got a little bit more faith in Jose Ramirez and some of those guys in Cleveland, because if you can shut Judge down, you got a chance of shutting the Yankees down, man. Because LeMahieu, I think he's back now. He didn't have a great year. Rizzo didn't have a great year. Stanton's been struggling. If they can catch lightning in a bottle, they'll be fine. But man, their offense has been putrid for about a month and a half. And I just don't see that turning around in the playoffs.
Right. Yeah, Cleveland's been like the sleeper team. Nobody paid attention to them.
Nobody paid attention to them.
Right,
you hit it.
They sneak right in there.
So it's
that's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting. We got a little time the next few weeks to see that. But if I had to, off the top of my head right now, I like Houston and Cleveland in the AL. Probably the Dodgers and Atlanta in the NL, and then kind of go from there. So,
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that. Yeah. Let's give a little shout out to this guy, Stephen Vogt, the A's catcher. You hear about him?
Oh yeah, he hit a home run in his last at bat.
Right, and then his first at bat in the majors, he hit a home run.
Oh, I didn't know about the first at bat.
Yeah.
Is he the only player ever did that? First and last?
It might be. That's kind of amazing, you know.
Yeah.
Really happy for him. That was nice.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Yeah.
He was jumping around the bases like he had just won the World Series.
Yeah.
It was incredible. Yeah, that was really nice to see.
Yeah, it's always good stories. All right, man. Well, this has been, we've had a nice, strong, but this time goes so fast. And,
it does.
I'm looking forward to tackling a number of issues. Of course, we're going to be front and center with the NFL all season.
Right.
NBA starting soon. What do you think of that?
I was just going to say that, yeah.
What do you think of that guy, Wembanyama from France, 18-year-old in the G League the other night, 37 points, 7 threes, 5 blocks. Man, he looked like the real deal.
That's what he did last night?
That's what he did in the G League, and he did in the G
League. He
League.
played the game last night somewhere. I haven't seen the results of that.
Oh, okay.
But, I just saw one clip of him, and he looked tremendous.
Yeah.
Guy that size, that moves the way he moves and shoot, and he's fluid. What can I say?
Yeah, he looks like he's going to be one of them once-in-a-generation players when he comes out in the draft next year.
I'm telling you, 7'4" and play like that is incredible.
Yeah, and he can move.
These guys, it just shows you the freedom that these guys have.
Yeah,
as they develop now, and they're not pigeonholed into spots like they used to be, like when we were coming up. And I always think about guys like, I was a really good friend. I got to meet Jim Barnes. After his playing career, I really got to be friends. 30 years.
Let the audience know what his moniker was.
Oh, Jim Bad News Bond.
All right.
He's an All-American at Texas Western University that became Texas El Paso a couple years after he graduated. He was an Olympic champion on the Olympic team, and he came out of college. He was the #1 draft choice of the New York Knicks the same year they took Willis Reed. He was #1. And News was, he was a tremendous athlete. He was like 6'6", but he was big. He was strong. He must be about 250, 260. I mean, not an ounce of fat on him at the time. And they made him play center. And he wasn't the center. And we used to complain about that. We complained about that all the time. We used to talk about his career. Because, they wouldn't let him play. News was a finesse player. He could shoot the jumper. I mean, he played today, the game was perfect for him. He was fast. He could run. He could shoot. He could jump. But because he was so big and strong, they put him in center. And he's playing against guys like Will Chamberlain and Bill Russell and guys like that. And News always used to complain. He said, man, I had to jump to get to where those guys could be standing still. And he wound up tearing his Achilles, as a result of that strain and fighting these monsters every night. And his career, went downhill. He had a decent, I think it's a rookie year, he averaged like 14, 15 points a game. So he had a decent start, but then playing center just wore him out, man.
Yeah, I recall he was a Celtic and a Laker.
Oh, he was a Celtic and a Laker and a Knick. He played for the Chicago Bulls and he played for the Washington Bullets at that time, Baltimore Bullets at the time. Yeah. And so he played a while, but he's a good athlete. But the point I'm making is that if he came along today, he would be allowed to play outside. At his size and his speed, he'd be, who knows what he might have done. He could shoot. He was a good ball player, but they made him play center. Like they would do guys like that back in those days. You was 6'7", 6'8" or more. Yeah, they put you in the hole, man. They wouldn't let you shoot jump shots from outside.
I know, man. I know.
So it's really nice to see these guys have the ability to just develop their game more and play any position that they can handle regardless of their size. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's definitely a freer game today.
It is.
That's why it's so important for people to understand the context of rules and how games are played when you compare players from different eras, because you can't just compare stats.
That's true.
Because,
That's true. Like they talking about, guys scoring records and stuff like that. I said, okay, we'll eliminate all the 3-point baskets.
Right.
And add the things up and then see how many more games it takes them to, reach those levels,
Yeah.
But it's just not going to happen. But, like you said, it's context. Yeah. But anyway, that's for another day.
Okay. Well, I'm going to throw a couple of things. One of them, I'm going to do a plug. As you know, I wrote the book, Tell Me Again Why These Mostly Black Players Aren't in the Hall of Fame. Is it racial? So I want to let the audience know if they want to take a look at some sample pages or even purchase it, they can go to Amazon.com, put in either Sheldon Curry or Tell Me Again Why These Mostly Black Players Are Not in the Hall of Fame. Is it racial? And you can take a look at it. The other thing I want to leave you guys with, we talked earlier about Lamar Jackson and the fact that, Baltimore has him doing everything and there are always going to be these naysayers. So here's something I'm going to throw out we can think about for the next few weeks. If Baltimore don't get it together, I'm going to propose that the San Francisco 49ers trade Trey Lance next year for Lamar Jackson. They could throw in some other people. Let Lamar go play with Frisco, with Debo Samuel and Mitchell and all those, and Kittle and all those guys in that defense. And then Baltimore can take a young quarterback. Since they don't want to pay Lamar, you'll get a young guy, still got about 2 or 3 years in his rookie contract. So I know that's blasphemous for Baltimore fans, but if they don't pay Lamar, send him to Frisco.
It's really funny. People were talking about that today. I think it's on the Keyshawn show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Somebody said,
because I've been thinking about that for a little while since Lance got hurt.
Yeah, they're talking about teams that he might go to. If somebody says San Francisco, they mentioned a couple other teams too.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
he would be perfect at,
Well, I'm in good company then, because I'm telling you, Baltimore gonna mess around and not pay this guy the money he wants. I'm pretty sure Frisco would acquire him and the next day give him this contract. I'm guaranteed.
I'm sure they would.
Man, can you imagine him in San Francisco?
Yeah.
All right, brother. Good brother. This has been fun. We're going to do this a number of times and hope the audience will join us. You take care of yourself until next time.
Do the same.
I will. And we'll figure out what the world has for us to discuss in the coming weeks.
I'm sure it'll be something.
I know it will. Hey, take care of yourself. All right.